In January 2025, after 4 long years of drilling through solid ice, a team in East Antarctica finally reached bedrock. They pulled out a remarkable 2,800-meter-long ice core. Trapped inside were thousands of tiny air bubbles, perfectly sealed and preserved. Those bubbles contained real atmosphere from more than 1.2 million years ago, directly dated using noble gas measurements, not guesses or computer models. It was frozen breath from a world that existed long before humans appeared on Earth. That one cylinder of ice quietly destroys one of the most popular conspiracy theories on the internet today. And the true story it reveals is far darker and more unsettling than the theory it replaces. You've probably seen the videos. The story spreads quickly because it sounds so dramatic. Antarctica was not always covered in ice. Ancient maps supposedly prove the continent was ice-free within historical times. Perhaps as recently as the early 1800s, then a sudden catastrophe, may be connected to the year without a summer in 1816. Flash froze the entire landmass. Beneath the ice lies the ruins of a lost advanced civilization, often called and an international treaty signed by more than 50 nations is hiding the truth from the rest of the world. It's a compelling narrative. I understand exactly why it captures people's imagination. But after spending weeks studying the original maps, old ship logbooks, scientific papers, and historical records, I discovered something very different. The real history of Antarctica is stranger, uglier, and more deliberately hidden than any lost civilization fantasy. It simply involves different villains. Let's begin with the famous maps that every version of the theory starts with. The Piri race map of 1513 is genuinely impressive, created by Ottoman Admiral Ahmed Piri from about 20 earlier charts, including some from Portuguese explorers, and a now lost map by Christopher Columbus. Yet right on the map itself, there is a handwritten note in Ottoman Turkish. It describes the southern land as hot, full of large snakes, and completely uninhabited. The Portuguese, it says, refused to land there because the shores were very hot. That is clearly not Antarctica. Historians have shown that the southern section is actually a distorted drawing of Patagonia and Tierra del Fuego. The Orontius Phineas map of 1531 looks even more convincing at first. It shows a large southern continent with bays, inlets, and what appeared to be river systems. But the mapmaker, a French mathematician, clearly labeled it Terra Australis, recently discovered but not yet fully known. He was simply speculating about unknown lands south of Magellan's voyage through Tierra del Fuego in 1520. Scholars have traced almost every line directly back to earlier globes. He was not drawing a secret frozen continent. Both maps enter the modern conspiracy world, mainly through Charles Hapgood's 1965 book, Maps of the Ancient Sea Kings. Hapgood argued they proved an advanced prehistoric civilization had mapped an ice-free Antarctica. To make the maps match today's continent, he had to rotate them, shift the South Pole by hundreds of kilometers, and ignore huge differences in size and shape, including the complete absence of the long Antarctic peninsula. Many YouTube videos still repeat these claims without ever checking the original sources. After examining the maps, I nearly walked away. The debunking felt almost too clean, but I kept digging because the deeper question remained. Why does the official history of Antarctica feel so strangely thin? Why did such a massive continent remain unknown for so long? The answer I found was an industry that popular history has almost completely erased. Around 1790, ships from Britain, Europe, and the young United States began hunting fur seals in the Southern Ocean. Chinese traders had developed a method to turn seal pelts into soft, luxurious fur for hats and clothing. Demand exploded overnight. Huge fleets descended on subantarctic islands. The cycle was brutal. Discover a new seal colony, slaughter the animals by the thousands, then move south when the population collapsed. By 1820, only 30 years later, fur seal numbers across the entire region had been almost wiped out. At least 7 million seals were killed before 1833. Beaches were left covered with raw carcasses for birds to clean. If you lived in any city built before 1850, the street lamps that lit your streets at night very likely burned seal oil. This ruthless commercial hunt, not ancient knowledge or secret maps, is what finally drove humans to discover Antarctica. By 1820, when the mainland was officially sighted, the Southern Ocean was already an industrial killing field. Hundreds of sealing ships had been working those dangerous waters for decades. Sealers were not explorers or scientists. They were businessmen. They kept their best hunting routes completely secret from competitors. An entire hidden geography of the far south existed only in private logbooks and captains' memories. So in Russia, Espellingshausen, Britain's Bransfield, and American sealer Nathaniel Palmer all sighted the Antarctic mainland within months of each other in 1820. It was not some mysterious, coordinated event. It was the natural result of an industry that had been pushing ships farther and farther south every season as sealed populations vanished closer to home. This same pattern of hidden motives appears again and again in the event's conspiracy videos. Love to twist. Operation High Jump in 1946. With 13 ships, dozens of aircraft, and nearly 4,700 men, is often portrayed as a secret mission to investigate ancient ruins or Nazi bases under the ice. The actual declassified records tell a simpler and less romantic story. The main goal was to strengthen and extend possible United States claims over large parts of Antarctica during the early Cold War. It was a political and military operation wrapped in scientific language. The expedition was poorly prepared, ended earlier than planned because of approaching winter, and many of the 70,000 aerial photographs it took turned out to be scientifically useless. The Antarctic Treaty of 1959 is frequently called the global cover-up, but the real reason it exists is much more straightforward. Nations were already pointing guns at each other over overlapping territorial claims. In 1948, Argentine forces fired warning shots at British troops. Britain responded by sending warships and Marines. 7 countries had conflicting claims on the same icy land. The United States and the Soviet Union were both rushing to plant their flags. The treaty froze all territorial claims, banned military activity and nuclear testing, and opened the continent to peaceful scientific research. It was the first arms control agreement of the Cold War, a necessary ceasefire, not a conspiracy of silence. And contrary to what many videos claim, Antarctica is not sealed off from the world. Since 1991, commercial tour operators have been bringing visitors every year. Tens of thousands of tourists now travel to the Antarctic Peninsula each austral summer on expedition ships. You can even fly from Chile and join a cruise. The trips are expensive, usually between $8,000 and $30,000. And the conditions are extremely harsh, but the continent is open to anyone who can afford it and handle the journey. Which brings us back to the ice itself. The evidence that makes the flash freeze theory physically impossible. Scientists have now recovered ice cores containing air from 800,000 years ago, 2.7 million years ago, and even 6 million years old. All of these samples were dated using independent physical methods. Antarctica has been covered by ice for roughly 35 million years. It is simply not possible for the entire continent to have flash frozen in 1816, or any recent historical year, and still contain million-year-old air bubbles trapped inside. The laws of geology, chemistry, and physics do not allow it. The conspiracy theory does get one thing partially right. Parts of Antarctica's history really have been concealed. Sealers hid their roots to protect profits. Governments hid their territorial ambitions behind the language of science. The shocking slaughter of 7 million seals and the dangerous, undocumented voyages that opened the continent have been quietly erased from most popular history books. There are still genuine mysteries waiting beneath the ice. Hundreds of subglacial lakes, including the famous Lake Vostok, buried under nearly 4 kilometers of ice, remain largely unexplored. Scientists believe even older ice, possibly older than the entire Quaternary period, may still exist in certain hidden formations. The deep interior of the continent is not yet fully mapped at high resolution. These are real, honest. They invite us to keep exploring rather than claiming we already know the final answer. The difference between a conspiracy and a true mystery is simple. A conspiracy decides the answer before asking the question. A mystery encourages us to look deeper. 35 million years of Earth's climate memory lie compressed in ice layers thinner than a fingernail. We have only just begun to learn how to read that ancient record. And unlike the dramatic story sold online, the real story of Antarctica does not need a lost civilization to feel extraordinary. It already is.